Hello there, Mad Mike here, and welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to talk about kind of a bit of a broader subject that's going to include some stuff from the rumor mill. Now, D23 is going to be coming up at the end of August, which is Disney's kind of annual showcase of various things specifically for Disney. And there's been news that various Marvel Studios properties are going to be premiering there. Now, what this means is probably at Comic-Con they premiered a lot of stuff, but they saved some things for D23, probably to attract viewership and promote the conference. So in at Comic Con, they announced most of their major movies. We have Doctor Strange 2. We have Doctor Strange 2, WandaVision TV series, Winter Soldier, Falcon TV series, Hawkeye TV series, a Blade film. We have confirmation, I guess, that it is a film, and Mahershala Ali is going to be starring as the new Blade. We also had confirmation of Shang-Chi, Eternals, the Black Widow film, which also premiered some footage at the time. Um, and I know I'm forgetting at least one, but we had confirmation of pretty much a lot, about five movies and three or four TV projects. Now, going to D23, there was some stuff that was mentioned at the end of the conference that they said they didn't have time to get to. One of which was the Captain Marvel 2 and Black Panther 2, as well as stuff involving the Fantastic Four and the X-Men. Now, there's some other stuff that's going through the rumor mill right now, including those things. Although I don't think Fantastic Four and X-Men were necessary have been gone through the rumor mill, but Black Panther 2 and Captain Marvel 2 have. And there are some narrative questions involving that. And then there's also some questions involving some other things that have popped up in relation to what we've already seen. Now, the problem that we have is that some of the Thor 4 was the other one I was thinking of. Sorry. Um, so so one of the major downsides to the film projects that they announced, most notably Thor 4, was the inclusion of the female Thor, the Jane Foster Thor, which will have a Natalie Portman coming back to reprise her role of Jane Foster, which we really hadn't seen in full since Thor 2, or Thor the Dark World. Now, this does explain a few things where she was at the premiere for Avengers Endgame, which a lot of people thought was kind of weird, but apparently this had been worked out about 6 months ago, so this was well before the premiere. And she also does have a little bit of screen time in Avengers Endgame, since part of it does take place during Thor the Dark World. But going forward on this, this is a problem because we have issue. There's a lot of backlash from the comic fan community, which is really the life's blood of the MCU, and because the female Thor in the comic books was very poorly written and very poorly received in Marvel's wave at the time of what was considered social justice warrior Marvel, which is still going on. There was a lot of concern going into this. Now, as far as the narrative for it, I think announcing it was a bad idea. I think announcing that she's going to pick up the hammer at Comic Con was a very bad idea. Because I don't think you should be advertising that as much. You should have said like, "Oh, she's going to come back and play Jane Foster again." Um, and then that also compounded with the announcement that Valkyrie is apparently a lesbian, which again I found kind of like, I don't know why anybody would give that much of a shit if she is or if she isn't in terms of the narrative perspective. That doesn't really make that much sense to me. Again, unless they're virtue signaling, which is a strong possibility. But the problems that we have arise from the fact that this was a very poorly written character in the comic books, and even though Taika Waititi is writing the film, and I trust him from a perspective because I really liked Thor Ragnarok, I feel like this could be one of those things where they're going to try and pass the mantle because they've already explained that in the Hawkeye series they're going to be passing the mantle down to Kate Bishop, which again was another character that was introduced in the comic books that was very poorly written and very poorly received and nobody liked. Um, so we have two characters that are now coming in that were kind of the forefront of that social justice warrior movement in Marvel. Now, some of them came from other aspects, like turning Iceman gay, which was really strange considering he had had a heterosexual history for the entirety of the comic run, going all the way back to X-Men #1 in the 60s. But one of the new announcements that's being rumored at D23 is Kamala Khan. Now, Kamala Khan in the comic books is she's a Muslim character, and again, she was written by an author who uh, specialized more in young adult type of writing. We're talking like Twilight stuff here, which again, it's very cringy. And really didn't really do very much in the superhero genre until she was hired on at Marvel for God knows what reason. And she introduced this character, Kamala Khan, who took over as Miss Marvel since Carol Danvers made the transition from Miss Marvel to Captain Marvel. So Kamala Khan came in, and she's kind of like a discount Reed Richards. She can expand her body in certain ways and stuff, and like grow herself and do various things. Basically, again, she's kind of like a discount Reed Richards in a lot of ways. So she's really not a very original character, which again I think is something that hurt her in addition to the poor writing. But there's rumor that she is going to be announced at this coming D23 in some fashion, whether that's going to be a television series for Disney Plus or whether that is going to be some inclusion of her in Captain Marvel 2 or something like that. So there's a lot to digest with those three announcements put together. There's problems there's serious problems there because you're taking characters that were not popular with what your core demographic is, which is comic book fans. Now, there are probably people that like those characters. I'm not going to say that there are people that don't, but it's concerning because you kind of when you make a film, you want to take the best things from the comic books, the best stuff that you can find, and transition that over into the films. That's the whole idea is you cherry pick what you want, the really, really good stuff. You don't want to publish the shit stuff. You don't want to have a Spider-Man movie that centers around one more day because people are going to be pissed because it's going to suck. But what you want to do is you cherry pick. These books or these characters that they're cherry picking were in books that did not sell. They were in books that sucked. They were in books that were terrible, that didn't move copies. None of the comics fans liked them. The only people that really did seem to like them were the people that were writing them and the people that were trying to sell them at Marvel. And this was the direct result. The whole wave of stuff that happened there is what's causing the comic book industry now to belly up, essentially. It damaged the comic industry for almost as much as the speculator boom. I don't think Marvel will ever file for bankruptcy because now they're owned by Disney, but I could definitely see Marvel Comics being liquidated because they're not making money eventually, and just the comics being outsourced. They're already outsourcing Marvel Comics to companies like third-party companies like IDW because Marvel Comics sucks. And we're seeing it in other things too. DC with their Vertigo line of comics is all going under because Vertigo was chocked full of social justice warrior comics that were horrible and didn't sell at all. And Vertigo is was a very very large imprint of kind of third party stories that didn't really have much to do with DC Comics, the main DC Comics universe. But they were still good stories. You had, Neil Gaiman's Sandman, I believe, was published in that. You had The Losers, which is one of my, the reimagining of The Losers, which was one of my more favorite ones. The Boys, which has just became a series on Amazon Prime. there's been a shit ton of really good comics that came out of Vertigo, and now and then they just flooded it with all this crap, and nobody wanted to buy it. Nobody gave a shit about it. The people that were writing them constantly attacked people on Twitter and in various other places. Arguably, some people probably deserved it for some of the things that they said, but a majority of them I don't think did. A majority of them were just saying that this doesn't seem to be correct. This doesn't attract me. Like, why are you doing this? And this is what's going to happen to Marvel. People have been saying since the announcement of Captain Marvel and all the stuff that happened with Brie Larson that this was going to come. And I was concerned about it too, but I was going to wait and see the products before I actually made my decision. I'm still in the process of making that decision because I haven't seen the final products. Now, you could write these characters a lot better for film and make certain things work, but the problem is you still have the stigma from the comic books that's going to carry over from your core demographic. And this goes back to my point before about demographics. And Hollywood doesn't understand that demographics exist. Now, I understand the idea of marketing to a demographic that maybe you don't have to try and garner more people in. I understand that from a point of view, which is why I think that a lot of these things should stay in Disney Plus. It should stay on the television side of things and not transition over into the films like the Jane Foster Thor is doing. Now the Hawkeye series is going on Disney Plus, and we don't know what's going on with Kamala Khan yet, if that's even going to be announced. Again, it's out of the rumor mill, but chances are it's probably going to be a television show. So if they relegate this stuff to Disney Plus and they keep it out of theaters for the most part, I think they can get away unscathed. But the way that they're marketing this stuff is that it is a direct tie-in to the MCU films, and if you want to know more about the films, you have to get Disney Plus and watch the series. And that's where your problem comes in, is that if you have people if you tie these things in so much that, like, oh, if you want the whole narrative you have to watch it. It's not like the Netflix stuff how it used to be, where you could enjoy the Netflix programs but they weren't they weren't really tied in all that well, or even at all in most cases, to the film universe. So you could watch the Netflix and not be ruined by anything in the films, or you wouldn't feel left out if you didn't watch the television show and then watch the films, because those characters don't cross and appear. So with what they're doing now, it seems like they're saying that, they've said with a few series already, WandaVision apparently directly ties into Doctor Strange 2. So if you want to understand more of what's going on in Doctor Strange 2, they want you to watch WandaVision. Now, this could also just be a marketing ploy as well for people to sign on to Disney Plus, but at the same time, you're looking at a problem where now the people that love the MCU, you're saying, oh, if you don't watch this, you're going to be out of the loop. And it goes kind of back to comic books again, where you have these big crossover events that happen in comic books, and then you have all these little tie-in books that go for the individual characters. If you have like Civil War, for example, when they did Civil War, they had like, okay, there's Spider-Man Civil War. So, there was the Spider-Man comic had their own little run that was tied into Civil War, the main Civil War comic book, because Civil War was its own little miniseries. I think it was 7 issues. And then they had a Spider-Man series that tied into that in his book line. And then all the other heroes that were factored into that had their own little tie-ins. So if you really wanted to know the whole encompassing story, you had to buy like 30 books. And that's what they're doing with these TV series and films now. And it's going to become a problem if they lose the narrative. Because if you start hammering in all these SJW Marvel characters into that, you're going to lose the comic crowd. And when you lose the comic crowd, you kill the franchise, because that is your lifeblood. The average film goer is not going to go see a Marvel film 7, 8, 9 times like a hardcore Marvel comic fan might who enjoys the MCU. And when the same exact thing happened with Star Wars, and you'd think that Marvel Studios would learn from what Kathleen Kennedy's debacle with Star Wars has been, where you take a day, you just go all willy-nilly and nonchalant. Now, they are still planning things. Kevin Feige is still very good at planning out films and how things are going to work out. Otherwise, the MCU wouldn't be as successful as it is. But if you try and hammer in all this stuff that you know the core demographic are not going to like to try and cater to people who don't watch your product initially, then you're going to sink your franchise. That's just the core of it, is you will sink your franchise if you do not cater to the core demographic. And you have people like Brie Larson who run their mouth and say, "Okay, I don't owe anything to men. I don't owe anything to any of the fans. I don't owe anything to this. I just owe everything to me and whatever causes that I want to support." For her, it's feminism, but it's different for a lot of them. And those are the people that need to have a gag order. They need to be told, if you're in our press junket, you can't say this shit. And Kevin Feige has not done that. He has not told people like Brie Larson, you're not allowed to say certain things in our press junkets because it's not very popular. It's not good. It's not good PR. Our PR department is going to have to clean up after you, and we don't want that. And eventually this is going to eat into their profits. This is going to eat into the profits of the films, of the television shows, of Disney Plus, of a lot of other things. And I think the only reason that Disney Plus is going to succeed initially is because they pulled all the Marvel properties from Netflix. They're going to pull all the Disney property, all the encompassing Disney properties from Netflix, probably the Fox properties as well, because they own most of those. And you're going to see the inclusion of all this original content that's going to initially attract people, because a lot of people aren't going to be paying attention to the downward trend in the MCU until it starts to happen. So we're going to see a lot of that type of stuff that's going to wind up doing really good initially, and then Disney Plus numbers are going to drop off because you're going to see other people going to other platforms like Amazon Prime or going back to Netflix or other things like that, because you're going to lose the MCU crowd just like you lost the Star Wars crowd, and it's just going to sink. And it's sad. It is honestly sad. As somebody who has thoroughly enjoyed the MCU for its duration, aside from a few little hiccups like Thor: The Dark World or Captain Marvel, I've really, other than those two films, really I've enjoyed most, if not all, of the MCU. Even the Netflix series, for the most part, at least the ones that I've seen, I liked a lot of it. I at least liked the actors that they chose to play the lead characters. And now we're in a scenario where you're going to see these properties come out, and you're going to see them make less and less and less money. And because of that, you're going to see it start to implode in on itself more and more and more. And the more Hollywood tries to fight their core, the more Marvel Studios specifically tries to fight their core demographic on this, the more you are going to see the movies fail. Because it's not going to be, they all say, oh, toxic man babies, and oh, this, and oh, that. Well, I'm sorry, but if you're going to go out and you're going to call your main demographic a bunch of toxic man babies, they're not going to go see your fucking movie. They're going to go see something else. They're not going to go see Disney properties. And Disney just spent $73 billion buying out Fox. So you should cater to your demographic, and if you don't, you deserve whatever you get when it comes back and bites you in the ass. And that's my opinion on this whole thing. And if these D23 rumors of Kamala Khan are true, and they move forward in the way that I hope they don't, in a way that brings these very unpopular characters to both the big and small screen, they're going to be essentially kneecapping themselves. And again, it's unfortunate, especially coming from me, somebody who has enjoyed the MCU for the most part, but this is a bad choice. This is a bad look. And we'll know more at D23. I'll do a video of it when the announcements come out of whatever's going to happen and whatever they decide to announce for the MCU. But for now, that's just some information to chew on. So that's my opinion. I'd like to know yours. Put your thoughts in the comments. Again, I like to read them. I like to know what you're thinking. Remember to hit the bell for notifications, hit the like button, subscribe, and remember, I live my life free of compromise. Do you?